Broadcast Amsterdam.
And we are joined by Kathy. We're going to switch gears and talk about the Amsterdam Comprehension Vision 2050.
I know, it's true. This has just come up on a whirlwind. We've got a few more days, listeners, to participate in this if you want to. We're invited to submit our thoughts on the Amsterdam Comprehensive Vision for 2050. What on earth is it? I hear you thinking. Well, first of all, it's been translated to comprehensive vision, but actually the Dutch word omgevingsvisie, I think really means environmental vision.
Oh, nice.
Because, there's certain things. It's not covering really schools or things like that or all the other things. It's really about, the physical environment of Amsterdam, guidelines for the development of the physical living environment of Amsterdam. So comprehensive doesn't really sum that up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say environmental vision from now on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a page on the iAmsterdam website organised by In Amsterdam with a translation summary of this because we're all invited, all residents of Amsterdam, to participate. But it's although it's organised by the gemeente, so there's also documents on the gemeente website, and that's the main place where the vision is put in Dutch. It's really been the whole kind of vision, the draft vision, because we've still got to contribute, has been put together by residents and various representatives of the local government. So it's not purely driven by the gemeente. There's already been input from the local community. So, but we're all invited as well, Alexis. So basically, what is it? It's a set of broad ideas, how to develop the prosperity, well-being and happiness of residents. But really, it does come back to this physical living environment, how to make a better city in that way. How's it going to work? So the third of middle, it's got 5 points to it, 5 focus areas. And then in a minute, I'm going to go on to kind of detail what those are. Because just by naming them, they're a bit wordy. Polycentric development, growth within limits, sustainable and healthy mobility, rigorous greening, and making the city together. What does that mean?
Yeah, you need to dig into this.
Let's do it. But we've got 3 days, so there's still a chance. And you can get an extension as well if you want. If you think, I need more time to get my thoughts together. And there's some people who really don't agree with some of these things. So stay tuned to find out, because you might think, I totally disagree with that. There's certainly people out there who do.
Yeah.
And you might want to add your voice to that.
All right.
So there's 5 strategic choices as we're talking. Polycentric development, growth within limits, mobility, walking and cycling, becoming a walking and cycling city or more of a walking and cycling city, greening, and becoming like more of an engaged doing it together, basically, all of this. So there's 5 kind of points to it. I'm going to actually start with some context. I changed my mind. The start of this kind of vision states, basically, we've already grown. The city's already grown as much since the last vision was kind of set out, because this is a regular process. They had a vision up to 2040. So, it's around 2020 now. Like, there's 20 more years of that vision, but we've already reached the growth that they were anticipating by 2040.
In terms of population?
Now. Yeah. And also, saturation density of the city and stuff. Okay. So we've already grown just as much as they thought that we were going to grow until 2040. So, it's huge. But also city transport, other things, services, perhaps, utilities haven't kept up with the growth of the city as much. So they haven't been prepared for that. They recognise there's incredible pressure on the city. They recognise the city's quite divided with balance of seeing the benefit of the economic activity, like some places are benefiting more than others and some are seeing the negative effects more than others. There's this definite need for livable neighbourhoods, like real pressure, basically pressure. And there's certain kind of things coming on from that. We need healthy environments to live in, especially with the coronavirus. Your absolute ultra local environments. We're seeing it with everyone flocking to the Vondelpark. Yeah. People coming from, if we had less centralised one mega park or whatever, and pleasant places where people want to congregate, and communities with a buzz as well, then you wouldn't perhaps see that as kind of like pressure on the centre and these single places. There was one interesting thing. So, it says more growth is expected of course. It's not going to stop growing. You cannot just say the city is closed, but it needs to be absorbed in a proper way, in an organised way. So, yeah, there's emphasis on balance, on decentralisation, and on being healthy and sustainable as a city. One interesting comment that was written in this document, it's translated into English. However international the city has become, Amsterdam's success still depends largely on the extent to which its own residents feel at home. Now, it is a little bit like us and them, you know, because it recognises a lot of the growth is in international companies and all the workers that it brings with them. But I would say to everyone listening, you know, that doesn't include us. We are all residents. If you're an expat who's only come for a year or a student who's just come for a few years, we're still residents. So I believe, hopefully, that when they say that, they mean all of us who live here. Not a kind of us and them, like
not the Dutch versus everybody else.
Like we were here first or whatever. So take that in this, hopefully, the open spirit in which it's meant. And of course, those of us who have been here longer and intend to stay longer, maybe we've got more of a drive to participate in this document, but we can do it on behalf of everyone who comes into the city and lives and works here. That's my viewpoint.
And it is, I mean, I think it's you see the efforts to balance the tension, because obviously people coming in displace, locals or native residents, but at the same time, they add an energy and a vibrancy to the city. Yes. I think one of the beautiful things about Amsterdam is its diversity of people from all over and really mixing here. And I think there are many Dutch people who appreciate that as well and choose to live here rather than another city, which would be, much more a majority Dutch, right? So, but of course, you don't want to feel overrun. It's like with tourists, you want to tourists, they bring energy, they bring money, they bring, liveliness to the city. But if it's too much, then it overwhelms. So it's finding the balance, I think. All right, Kathy, tell us more about the Amsterdam environmental vision.
Yeah, cool. So the very first point in the strategic elements was polycentric development. What does that mean? Basically, the statement is Amsterdam's out of balance. At the moment, everything's directed towards the centrum. So a very, very big part of this is to have both the city and the region. They talk about the metropole area. So that's also going to apply to places like Zaandam, Purmerend, Hoofddorp, how that applies, but as well. But as far as the centrum of the city goes, also decentralising and doing things structurally that will change that feeling, really developing other attractive districts with their own life and buzz, like cafes and restaurants and life. Theatres, a big point, and this has been in the press as well, there's going to be a new theatre at the Sloterplas, or I think possibly it means more like moving the theatre, I think that was over in New West. Sloterplas will get a theatre, basically. The Havenstad features a lot in this vision, in this environmental vision, but also the Schinkelkwartier. I was out cycling there over the weekend. I often cycle on the way to the Bos. You can go through the Schinkelkwartier, and it's very interesting. And my husband was pointing out the different developments and stuff. There's some retail or not retail business units there, and how they want to put a bridge over the water. And all of this, it sounds quite positive, but actually there are some residents who don't want that cycling bridge over the Schinkelkwartier. So, it all sounds very rosy, but maybe, dig down into it and you'll see that people are pointing out, hang on a minute, or whatever. So we were talking about that. The northern banks of the Eye and West and Zuidoost and Noord are in there. So they're basically, as well as the space for business and residents, it's more support for shops, cafes and restaurants. You don't often get that, do you? Cultural spaces. They want a cultural centre at the Bouwslotermeerplein in Noord. That's really nice, because it's very much at the moment just a feeling of everyone goes through it. But that's really nice that people will stay there. And there's going to be kind of more development of shopping malls in Osdorpplein, in the Amsterdam Support, and also Bouwslotermeerplein, become more metropolitan urban centres. I think basically somewhere where you might want to stay rather than go through and hang out. So that's interesting. And like I say, it will transfer to some of the other areas that, commuter kind of places like Hoofddorp, Purmerend, Zaandam and Almere. And a lot of this is to do with transport, better cycling, which is one of the later points in the vision. The second point, let's go on. I think we get the polycentric development, I suppose. Yeah, to get the balance back. And then growth within limits. That's the second one. So basically, they're saying at least 150,000 new houses, or when they say houses, dwellings, could be apartments, for 250,000 new residents by 2015. I kind of think that's quite low, considering the amount we need. But that's what's set in there at the moment. But as well as that, 200,000 new jobs. But with conditions. So how is that managed? It's only allowed within the current city limits. So they don't want sprawl. So that's the current, very much part of the vision. It's set there in the draft vision.
Yeah, it's important to do dense housing, I think, is the way of the future. And that also then creates neighborhoods where you don't commute because you live in dense housing, you're next to transport points, but then you're also next to lots of shops and things, and then you have the density to support those things, right? You can't build cafes and things if there's not enough population there to keep them in business. So I
suppose chicken and egg, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but
You're right. They may even have, so there will be some high-rise space, they're saying, so that's above 70 metres or up to 70 metres around. I forget what that sign means, like greater or less than. 70 metres, living and working space. So that's high-rise space around Lelylaan, South, so Zoud Station, Rai and Sloterdijk stations. So those stations, but also, again, more things to do in those areas.
Yep.
You can already see it at Lelylaan that there's high-rises and stuff.
Yeah, we have friends that live in a big building there.
Yeah.
It's lovely,
A couple of friends, and I've heard, people with those apartments, you have amazing views, you get a lot of light. Some people will be very up for that. So point 3 in the 5 strategic choices given in the environmental vision is mobility, sustainable and healthy mobility. They want the city to be a cycling and walking city, a walking and cycling city. And so basically cars are guests. That is the big thing working towards 2050. We can already see it. Parking spaces being taken away from the street. That's been heavily done into pipe and stuff. So there are going to be busy through routes, such as at Lelylaan and Goosjeweg, if you know where that is. It's going to become more like a green avenue, given with more substantial space to cyclists. And there's going to be much more cycling and transport connections, cycling networks, new connections between city districts. And the big, I think, headline thing is not just one, but 2 proposed bridges across the Eye. Linking
cycling bridges.
They would be cycling, maybe with
walking,
extra something else, but certainly cycling, and that's across the Eye. I knew there was going to be 1, but I didn't realise 2. And then, of course, I mentioned before, a bridge across the Schinkel and a cycle bridge across the Amstel. So that's another few bridges. Basically fast cycle routes, more train and metro and bus connections. So that Amsterdammers basically should only be a short walk or cycle away from the city amenities such as parks in their own neighbourhoods. And so I think that's really good. The next point, rigorous greening. Rigorous greening, it sounds painful, doesn't it? But basically it's necessary as well for global warming as well. So that's thinking green roofs. We've got already green wedges, places that they took like Waterland, which are close to the city, and these landscapes kind of feed into the way, just things like water draining and soil and stuff like that. So they do want green space as well, and bringing up the paving stones in many places. In my area, in this area, in Oud-West, people were told you cannot put paving stones on your gardens now. Like you cannot just freshly pave them. If they're already paved, I think that's okay, but it's just like there's not enough drainage, so people kind of just pave over their gardens. So that's going on. All sorts of things there, basically under rigorous greening. But you'll see things like squares and stuff like that become much more green and more like less concrete and less kind of hard stuff there.
No, he was saying a minute ago that I was reading that the Royal Institute in the Tropen Museum are doing a blue-green roof, and it's and one of the reasons is for climate, that the roof can adjust with the climate. It can sustain during drought, but it can also absorb a lot of water in heavy rains. So looking that way, I think, is really important.
Yes. And then finally, it's making the city together. So it's making sure that we're engaged. Certainly there's this opportunity, but the way it works is that after this submission, if we make our submissions, they will get answers. There will be like a notes of response afterwards to say whether your points were accepted or in what way, or were they pushed aside? What were they, did they have any effect? And then after that process of getting people's feedback and submissions, then it goes to the commenter. And then the commenter debate whether or not to adopt it or not, or I'm not sure whether they can adopt the whole thing or just say yes or no, or how nuanced that is. But then basically that's a decision of whether they take it forward. And after that, it basically becomes an obligation. So I didn't realise that. They are kind of tied to say, well, they've got to deliver it, which is interesting. And this is, so this is a requirement by law that they have to go through this process now as well. So all kind of, I think, local city councils have to do this. And it'll need to come in place by, I think, January 2022. So we can play our part in that. You can email them. We'll put links on our website. Read the documents, obviously, at first and put your thoughts together. You do have to give your name and address and everything. But the nice thing is, you can expect a response, which is amazing. Amazing.
Very nice.
Do you have the inkling to do something about it, Alexis, to make a point?
I'm interested. Yeah, I think I need to dive into it more. I mean, honestly, I don't find any of it objectionable. So I think usually probably a lot of the people who are driven are like, I disagree. I don't want a cycling bridge. But to me, this seems very forward thinking. And I understand that people don't like change and they don't like development. They don't like density. But I think realistically, that's where we have to go. And to keep the border of the city within the limits and not have sprawl, I think, you have to have high rise and apartment living. And that's kind of, it's a way towards a more environmental future. You get people in their neighborhoods, less commuting, less cars. Yes. So I'm on board. Yeah. I'm approving of this vision. I'm sure if I really combed through it, there might be some things I would raise an eyebrow at, but overall it sounds good to me.
And I think in the future, basically they're saying that they want to keep people's involvement in the physical development of the city. There'll be more transparent planning so that you can get on a kind of short-term planning, then more involved and able to put your thoughts and more things like cooperative housing schemes and things like that. So that's involved in that number 5, community engagement, doing it together. However, the actual huge document, the vision, they say once it's agreed, then there are no appeals. They say no appeals. I'm like, how does that work? But there must be some debate on how it's.
I'm sure. I mean, it's like the broad strokes, right? There's lots of individual details on how it will be carried out and things like that. So, but interesting. Okay, well, yeah. So then people who disagree will have to get their comments in quickly.
Yeah. So as a reminder to our listeners, you have until Wednesday, the 3rd of March, to submit your thoughts if you want, and then also if you want an extension, just email them and you get 2 weeks extra.
Okay.
But it's really specifics as well on the In Amsterdam translation as to breaking down where exactly they're talking. There's a lot of talk about Port of Amsterdam. Lelylaan is on there quite a lot. And you might see something that springs out and says, oh, that's my neighbourhood, or that's where I work.
Right. And you mentioned Sloterdijk and Schinkelbert. So these are neighbourhoods that are undergoing a lot of transition, right? And so hot topics.
Yeah. And also for those people looking for accommodation and houses to buy or to rent, it might be interesting to see, where are the areas that are going to be developed and stuff. And then, those might be a place to focus on your house hunting, because that the city's got their sights on supporting those areas.
And there could be some really nice kind of things, we usually say in cities where the artists move, right? They move out there and then there start to be cultural spaces and there should be really cool restaurants. And all of a sudden it's sort of like New York has become like this. Manhattan is no longer the place, right? Brooklyn has sort of seized the gravity over there. So, this can happen where there's really cool neighborhoods that take on their own energy.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right.
Broadcast Amsterdam.
Broadcast Amsterdam, your local radio station, 24/7 and on demand. Or on broadcastamsterdam.nl.